Jesus, all things are possible. I can mount on wings like eagles and soar. When I call on Jesus, mountains are gonna fall. 'Cause he'll move heaven and earth to come rescue me when I call.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is another It Is Possible Tuesdays with Sanya. And this evening, you are in for a treat. I'm totally excited by my guest. I've known this person for over 30 years. Yeah. He just looked at me a while ago and was like, 30 years? Are you sure? Yeah.
Yes, it's
It
over
is.
30 years.
It is. Let us start our usual way. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for prosperity and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Ladies and gentlemen, a very forward-thinking individual, an erudite individual. I'm not going to tell you anything else about him because he's going to introduce himself and tell us his name, where he was born, if he's the first or the last or the middle child, and then we take it from there. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jeffries, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. My name, I'm going to go through them slowly. My name is Kayode Jumoke Olatunji Kalfani Kwesi Smith. I was born in St. Andrew, Jamaica. I am one of 7 siblings. I am the third for my father and the first for my mother. And I think that answers the 3 questions that you just posed.
Thank you very much. And I want my listeners to take note that he answered only what I asked him. And you'll find out why he answered only why I asked him. It's because of his profession. But we're going to go into the names. And I am excited about the names. I'm going to be excited for the whole of this interview, but that's fine. Each one of those names must have a meaning. And I am always interested in finding out what people's names mean and if they're actually living up to their names. So each of your names, I'd like you to take me through the meanings of the names.
Okay. Well, how I got the names, before I explain what the names mean, both of my parents are Afrocentric, and in the 1970s in Jamaica, there was an Afrocentric revolution that was taking place, an intellectual revolution that was taking place at the university campus at the University of the West Indies. And both of my parents were students at the university at that time. So that is how both of my parents agreed to give, starting with me, all of their children African names. So my first name, Kayode, he brought joy. Jumoke means beloved by all. Olatunji means honor reawakened, or the father is reborn. Talfani, it's not originally my name, it's my brother's name, but he's autistic. And when I was younger, I decided to take one of his names so that way I could live some of his life for him. And what Kalfani means, it means destined to rule. Kwesi is a Ghanaian name, which means born on a Thursday, which I am. But my father has given Kwesi to all of his children subsequent to me, so that way when we get tired of the slave man's name, we can drop Smith and use Kwesi as our last name. So my other brothers are Kamau, Mandela, Kalfani, Kamau, Kalfani, Kwesi, Kamau Babatunde, Kalfani, Kwesi Smith, Machel, Kwesi Smith, Azim, Kwesi Smith, Jelani Mandela, Kwesi Smith, and I have older brothers who were sired before the African Revolution.
I love this. I love this because your parents' legacy is evident in your names and, of course, the life that you live, because I am assuming that you're living up to those names.
Well, I don't know if I still bring my parents joy. I hope so. But the names, my father used an African naming tradition to name us. So what he did was that he observed us, how we interacted with people when we were born, and he gave us names accordingly. So I brought joy to both of my parents. Kamau means silent warrior, which he is autistic. Machel, he named Machel after Samora Machel, who was an African leader. Jelani was born in the year that Mandela was freed, and Jelani means
Really?
mighty in 1990. Yes, Jelani means mighty, so he was Jelani Mandela. Azim, I'm not sure of the meaning of Azim, but I know that there must be some reason behind it.
Yes.
So that is how we got the names that we got. I am not sure I'm beloved by all anymore. Um, I am not sure that I still bring my parents joy. I'm not sure that, well, the first thing you said when I turned on my video was you look so much like your father. And then I put my glasses on, which makes me look even more like my father. So I guess I still am my father reborn. And I haven't dropped up the Smith yet, but I am still I'm going to give all of my children the surname Kwesi Smith. So hopefully that tradition will continue as well.
Fantastic. You know, as I'm speaking to you and listening to you, you've spoken about the fact that your parents are Afrocentric, and I want you to share with me what that meant for you as a child growing up. Having parents who are part of an intellectual revolution on the university campus and who were Afrocentric in their lifestyle.
Well, it presented a lot of challenges. So, for example, in going to my primary school, the best primary school in Jamaica, I'll give a free plug to St. Richard's Primary. In going to that institution, an incident happened one day because my father wrote Jumoke on one of my textbooks, and the teacher didn't know who to give the book to. So she was a bit nonplussed, and then she mispronounced the name, and my hand shut up, and I said, "It's my book." So she's like, "But your name is Kayode." And I was like, "Yes, that's one of my names." So she was like, "What are the rest of your names?" And I said, pretty quickly, Kayode Jamoki Olatunji Kalfani Kwesi Smith. And she was like, "Whoa." And so she brought me to the front of the class. This is in grade 2. She brought me to the front of the class, and she had me tell the class my full name, to which the whole class erupted in laughter. She then decided that she was going to take me to every single classroom in the school. So she took me to 2R1, 2R2, when I was in 2R2, 2R3, 2R4, 1R1, 1R2, 1R3, all the way up. That morning, I spent the morning traveling every classroom in St. Richard's for them to laugh at me. Nonetheless, those are my names, and I was very proud of them, and I knew what they meant from I was about 5. So starting St. Richard's, I knew what they meant, and I was able to tell everyone what my names meant and why it is that I have them. But in my teenage years, it set me on a journey of discovery because I wanted to find out more about why it is that my parents were Afrocentric and how it is that I was meant to contribute or carry on this legacy of Afrocentrism. And it happened over a period of time because the first book my father gave me to read was Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And I read that while I was working in his office one summer. He gave me that book. And on another occasion, he carried me with him to IRFM's office in Ocherias to listen to Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakanan talk to some Rastas. And he was talking about his book, The Black Man of the Nile. And that then set me off into another thing. And then I was reading another one. My dad has this book cabinet that's here. and he gave me the key. And on my 18th birthday, he gave me the key, and I was able to read, even though I was stealing out the books before, I was able to read Iceman's Inheritance by Frantz Fanon. I was able to read um, We the Black Jews by Yosef Ben Yakanan. I was able to read a small book called The History of the Bible. I was able to read other books by Dr. John Henrik Clarke. And then that set me off on a cycle of finding out more about African history. And I joined an African history class while I was studying in England at a place called the Nub. And I did both the beginners, the intermediate, and I was supposed to start the advanced class, but I never got a chance to complete the advanced class. And I mean, it gave me an understanding of where it is that we had come from, where it is that we are now, and I then got a better understanding of why it is I was being prompted to do the things that I was being prompted to do, because of where it is that we are yet to go and how it is that I'm supposed to contribute to our journey to getting there. And I say all of that because I am a lawyer, I am a computer scientist, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a farmer, and I am hoping soon to be a father. So all of these things put together is what I'm talking about, where it's to go. In particular, my interest in farming, because I believe as a Garveyite that we should be self-sufficient and we should be able to provide food for ourselves as a starting point in becoming the African dynamite that Marcus Garvey spoke about when he said, "Up, you mighty race, you can
You
achieve what
can't
you
do
will."
what you feel. Yeah.
Yes.
The teacher has become the student. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, wow, you're dropping nuggets of wisdom and you're speaking to me. You're resonating with me because not many people know that my first name is African.
Right.
Yeah. So if everybody thinks about Abba Sanjo, my first name is a part of that name. And I
Yeah.
claim that heritage. I don't care who doesn't want to accept me. I'm claiming that heritage, you know? And a lot of what you have said are things that my mother spoke to, about with me. And I recognize the passion that you have for that. You've spoken about being a Garveyite. You've spoken about the self-discovering. You've spoken about being on a journey and you are being forward thinking about where you need to go. You mentioned that pivotal primary school situation where the teacher took you to everybody's class and asked you to share your name. You've said that you are proud of your name. At any time during your primary school experience, apart from that incident, have you ever been made to feel that you are a spectacle because of who you are? And how did you navigate that?
Yes, both at primary school and at high school, even in later life at university and at bar school.
Wow.
Um, one of the incidents that happened at bar school is that we had this gentleman was nothing less than a genius. His name is Stuart Syme. And for anyone who studies law, in particular civil law, you will come across his books because he's one of the editors of Blackstones, which is a legal text. And I had the pleasure of being taught by him, and it was interesting because the first day of bar school, you're coming, you're expecting introductions and inauguration, and you've just collected the books. You don't even you haven't even gotten all of your books yet, and we're going to this lecture and good morning class. I'm sure that you guys aren't expecting this, but and he dove straight into teaching, of course, on the very first day. And why I chose that example to explain how it is that I felt like a spectacle is that when I would go into the bar school office, I hadn't introduced myself to anyone. And as soon as I step in, oh, hi, Kayode, here's your assignment. My assignment is put aside and it is waiting for me. The people in there know me. I don't know how they know me, but they know me. And it has been like that throughout my time, both at primary school, high school, university, all the way through. I don't know why. I think it has to do with my aura, where people just I stand out, not just for my names, but for what I say, but for the stances that I take and the things that I believe, because I believe in fairness, equity, and justice. And those are the principles that, I mean, I grew up hearing and I grew up listening to my father and mother talk about. So I've always been somewhat of a spectacle, even when I was at swimming class, at karate. I don't know, I always seem to stand out, maybe for the wrong reasons.
I think it will be for the right reasons, but
I,
um,
I hope it's for the right reasons.
I think you spoke about your parents being um, Afrocentric. You have names that are African. You are a Garveyite. What did you actually decide that you're a Garveyite? I mean, yes, your parents have spoken about it, but what was it that made you decide that this is something that I'm going to embrace and I'm going to share with others?
Okay. Well, I had the wonderful opportunity because both of my parents grew up in Seventh-day Adventism, but I had the my mother is an eternal student. She studied psychology, sociology, and economics. Then she went on to the law. Then she went on to the nursing. Then she's done a lot of things. But it's her spiritual search that exposed me to a lot of things because she studied Buddhism in Jamaica. She studied Islam in Jamaica, Rastafarianism, all different kind of things. But when she introduced me to Islam, I was learning with a gentleman called Brother Samad in Havendale, and he had a wife. Her name was Sister Samad. She is one of the pioneers of Afrocentrism, and she came from America to Jamaica with Brother Samad. So I would go to their house on a Friday evening, and Brother Samad would be in he would be trying to teach me Arabic, and later on I would go and sit with Sister Samad, and she would teach me something else. And typically, what she would teach me is Garveyism. And when I asked her one day, how does one become a Garveyite? And her answer to me was that once it is that you're seeking to become a Garveyite, you are a Garveyite. You might not have all the knowledge about Garvey and what it is that he was teaching, but she taught me a principle that I have later come to recognize as whatever it is that you are seeking is also seeking you as well. So it is through that and my further understandings and searchings and readings, like having read the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey and spending time at Garvey House on King Street, I think it is, and doing all of the Black history stuff that I do, because I used to do a lot of Black history stuff. So that is what brought out the Garvey in me. And when I was doing my history courses at the NUB, the teacher, Mwalemu Onyeka, one of the things that he said to me, because I asked him, and this is one of the things with me is I'm very forthright and very direct. So I asked him, what is the solution for Black people or African people what is the solution? Because it's one thing for us to go back and look reflectively on our history and say, okay, we've made this mistake, we made this mistake. The Maroons shouldn't have stopped fighting the British. They shouldn't have returned slaves. How do we now grow past that? How do we now develop as a cohesive whole? And what he said to me is that the solution, we've already gotten the solution, and the solution is Garveyism. The solution is to look inward and to develop each other in a self-sufficient, in a way that makes us self-sufficient. Because we have no friends in the world. And if we keep on looking for friends in the world, we're going to be colonized and recolonized. So what it is that we need to do is that we need to start doing for self. That is the most important thing. And because Garveyism was identified as a solution for me, that is what I practice.
Okay. Now, somebody listening to you might say, when you say we have no friends, are you saying that we are all alone, or are you saying that we need to be selfish, or is there something else that you're saying?
I am saying something else. There's nothing wrong with being selfish. The difficulty that we have is that principally, when we look at our history, we have been xenophilic. We love the strangers. We welcome the strangers. We bring them into our homes. We introduce them to our children. We allow our children to marry strangers and to go and live in foreign countries, not knowing how it is that they're going to be treated in those foreign countries. Now, the difficulty with that, as we've seen historically, is that most of the times the strangers are coming for our resources. And because we're from, and this is one of the things that Francis Fanon talks about in Iceman Inheritance, difference between the viewpoint of somebody who has grown up in a prairie where there's an abundance and someone who has grown up in a cave where there is a certain amount of lack. There's no sunlight, there's no, so it causes one person to hoard resources, and the other person doesn't hoard resources because there's so many resources. You alone can't. So you have a communal view of thinking as opposed to an individualistic view, which is what the Europeans tend to have. So the reason why we need to recognize these things and the reason why we need to implement some amount of selfishness is that the whole world stood by and watched while Africans were enslaved and did nothing and said nothing. So we can't geopolitically be looking for friends from China or Japan, from anywhere else, because they, and I think, are complicit to a certain extent in what history has done to us. However, I don't blame anyone, because at the end of the day, people only treat you how you allow them or train them to treat you. And it is for us to recognize where it is that we need to put boundaries and where it is that we need to have a communal view, because it is always one of us who they use to defeat us.
Yes.
So the enemy without can never defeat you without the enemy within.
Powerful statements. Were you like this in high school?
I was. And if you were to go back, for example, and ask some of my friends from high school, I read a book in high school that changed my life. It was a book about Michael Manley, but it wasn't written by Michael Manley, and it was talking about decolonializing the mind of Caribbean people.
Yeah.
I think it was written by Walter Rodney. And
yeah, it is.
When I read that book, I was in sixth form, and it was like I was on a soapbox in Piccadilly Circus, because I was, all right, one of the things that I would do is, back then, I used to use Bounty Killer as, because Mr. Sankofa had just finished teaching us about French Revolution. One of the things that I had recognized at my time at Ulmer's was how much it is that Jamaica at the time had mirrored where France was before the revolution. And I had imagined or probably hoped that Bounty Killer was going to be the Robespierre of the Jamaican Revolution. And that is what I was talking about. And my friends from UTEC as well will remember me talking about starting a revolution and blood running from running in the streets from Jack's Hill down to the wharf. So I think I have become less revolutionary.
Yes.
Back then, what you can't see in my office, my home office here, what you can't see is this picture here. It's blurred out. It's a picture of one of my heroes. That's Malcolm X. And this other picture over here is a picture of me at bar school. But I was very firebrand. I was very revolutionary, and I probably still am. But I think the fire has cooled somewhat. I think.
And do you think that's a bad thing?
I think it's something that happens. Because what Mwale Muonyeka told me is that there are no revolutionaries who are over 30 years old. Revolution is something for the young. Because they want to change and live to participate in the change. I don't want to change and then leave the living or leave the post revolutionary change or go through that in old age, which is principally why revolution is for the young. Because when Fidel Castro and Che Guevara were doing what they were doing, they weren't 40-year-olds, they weren't 50-year-olds. When other revolutionaries were doing what they were doing, they didn't get to the age that I am at now. You don't try and start a revolution when you're tired, when you wake up in the morning and you're having to put your feet down and you hear your knee cracking. That's not revolutionary. So when you look, for example, at the Black Panthers, all of them were young people who had this Afrocentrism in them. When you look at the young Marcus Garvey and you look at the other intellectuals who he was up against at the time, they were in the prime of their youth. So I think old age has probably robbed me of a bit of the revolutionary spirit. But it is still there. I believe.
There's still the smolder there. There's still
Yes,
a smoldering there.
Embers there,
Uh, you mentioned about having boundaries. Why do you think it's necessary to have boundaries, and what kind of boundaries have you implemented throughout your life that you think are important?
Well, it's definitely important to have boundaries, because if you don't, what will happen is that people won't know how it is to deal with treating with you without offending you. And I think it is important for you to let people know where your boundaries are, so that way they can know how to operate with you peaceably. And it's very important for you to have boundaries, because people might not understand why it is that you do the things that you do. So, for example, in the Ashanti culture, there is a stool, and the stool is supposed to be the seat of God. Now, one of the reasons why the Ashanti fought the British to the bitter end into the 20th century is because the Englishmen came and sat on their stool. Now, the stool, you are not to sit on the stool. The stool is there for the presence of God to be on the stool. So when it is that you come and you offend the people in that way, they're going to fight you to the bitter end.
Yes.
No, I don't necessarily want to fight you to the bitter end. So I let you know that I am very, 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 what is the word I'm looking for? I am very...
That you want them to respect your values and the things that you hold dear to you, and you expect them to behave in a particular way?
Yes, but there's a word that encapsulates it, which eludes me. But I'm very attached to things that, for example, my father has given me or my mother has given me. And if you destroy them, then, especially because my father has passed away,
Yeah.
you would have destroyed something that I can't replace. I can't
Yes.
get, and
The sentimentality of it
I
is
am very
powerful.
sentimental. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm very sentimental, and that is one of my boundaries. Just the things that I've been given by my father, just leave those alone, and we'll get along peaceably. And my mother. So don't throw away my mom's things. Right now, I have a whole area of storage area with my mom's and my dad's old stuff, because I'm very sentimental like that, and I'm a hoarder.
I was just going to ask you that because it reminds me of myself in terms
Yes.
of holding on to things that I think that have meaning to me and somebody else wouldn't understand or appreciate it. It's yeah. Um, Now you have been to quite a number of countries. You studied in the Netherlands. I did share with my audience that you're quite erudite and a brilliant person. You got 3 scholarships to study in foreign countries. Tell me about that.
Well, when I was at the University of East London, I got a Erasmus scholarship. Erasmus was a European who traveled all throughout Europe. And what they've done now is that the European Union has put together the Erasmus scholarship to bring greater integration between European countries. So what you find is that I initially I got the scholarship to go to Norway, but when I spoke to the gentleman and he found out that I was originally from Jamaica, he thought that Norway might not have, was it Norway? Either Norway or Sweden. He thought that I might not necessarily like that fit because it's very, very cold. So he recommended I go to Utrecht. So I went to Utrecht and I got a scholarship from the European Union, the Erasmus scholarship to go to Utrecht. And I spent a semester there, and it was a fantastic experience. So I come back from doing that, and from I had applied for a scholarship from, okay, let me just step back. In order to become a barrister, you have to be called by one of 4 inns, either Lincoln's Inn, Gray's Inn, Middle Temple, or Inner Temple. My inn that I'm a part of is Lincoln's Inn. So I applied for a scholarship from Lincoln's Inn, and they gave me a named scholarship by a barrister by the name of Droop. He's an 18th century barrister, and he had bequeathed some money to the inn for them to give scholarships to young people. So I got one of those scholarships. So I went to bar school on a scholarship, which is quite unusual because, one, you don't have a lot of black barristers, and two, they normally save the scholarships for the middle class, white, Oxbridge students. When I say Oxbridge, I mean Oxford, Cambridge, University of London, so on and so forth. So it was a big deal for me to get, especially because I'm coming from what they call a polytechnic. University of East London is somewhere down in the 90th percentile. And I got a scholarship, a named scholarship as well, not an entry scholarship, but a named scholarship. While at bar school, my performance was as such that I was invited to apply for another scholarship where they were giving people the opportunity to go to South Africa to volunteer at the legal aid clinic at the University of Western Cape. So I applied for that scholarship, I interviewed for it, and I along with another person, we were both awarded the scholarship. She didn't take up the scholarship, I
Really?
did. And I applied to Lincoln again for some additional assistance with getting to and from South Africa. And they gave me another scholarship where they paid for my airfare and gave me some sponsorship towards my stay in South Africa. I've also been to, while In Netherlands, I went to Germany, I went to Spain, I went to Portugal. On my way to South Africa, we stopped in Dubai. I have also been to the DR. I've been to America. I haven't been to Canada as yet. Yeah, so I've been to a few places.
And how has your time in these different regions impacted your outlook on life and the way you operate within the realm of law?
Well, it blew me away because the images that I had seen of Africa growing up was one of, I mean, there's one in particular that stands out with a buzzard or what we in Jamaica would call a
Yes,
drum drum.
yes. The little boy.
On the ground, waiting patiently beside this boy who has this overly swollen stomach, and the buzzard is just waiting for him to die.
Mm-hmm.
No, when I went to South Africa, it, the difference is incomprehensible. There's a highway in South Africa which makes Mandela Highway, as well as the new highways that have been built, makes them look passé. It's 4 lanes on one side, 4 lanes on the other side. So it's an 8-lane highway. And when I saw that and I was being driven on it, and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, but where are the starving people? Where are these shanty towns? Granted, I did end up seeing the shanty towns because where I was volunteering, I was volunteering in a place called Kailicha. And Kailicha is bigger than Jamaica. It's about 200 square miles. And the conditions are dire. They live in something, they call them windy houses. And there's some little zinc houses, and 2 families live in each. One family on one mattress, another family on another mattress, no bathroom, no living room. And I mean, what I was there doing, I was there assisting with some government-built houses that had been, people from Zimbabwe had come across the South African border and had been presumptuous enough to come and take up residence in these houses. And then there had been a xenophobic attack because the people from South Africa, they don't like foreigners, and then these people are living in the houses that they should have gotten, and they went in and they chopped them up. So we were trying to sort out and ameliorate who it is that should have been given these houses and how it was that what was a fair distribution policy, taking into consideration the people who were fleeing from Zimbabwe, as well as people who were on the ground who needed particular housing. But how it is that it shaped my world outlook is that you get to see people, because coming from Jamaica, you think you know what poverty is. And having lived in England, that is the first place I was exposed to poverty. Living in England was the first place that I went to my bed hungry. Living in England was the first place where I lived beside people who did not want to know me. I lived beside a man in England on a road called Treherne Court. I lived beside him for 8 years and I don't know what his name is and he doesn't know what my name is. And even when his house was on fire, he didn't want us to help him put out the fire because he's racist. So he didn't want any assistance from us. He didn't want anything from us. Let the house burn down. Fine. So it changed my outlook because I didn't know. Because growing up in Jamaica, racism, just a word. It's what you experience in Jamaica is more classism than racism, even though it is rooted in racism, because the upper class in Jamaica are white or of mixed colors. But I had never, for example, I went to America one summer where my aunt was a professor at the University of Virginia. My aunt is a staunch Seventh-day Adventist. So she carries us, that is myself and 2 of my younger brothers, to go to the bookstore. And she says, you have to get one educational book, one religious book, and one book for your own enjoyment. The three of us pick up 3 books and we join the line. And I'm with my aunt, who's a professor of linguistics, Professor Dr. Leonie Smith. And cashier, who's about 18 or 19, looks at the 4 of us and she says, I'm not selling any niggers. This is what she says in 2005. This is not 1888 or 19, and this is 2000. She said, and they called the store manager and she said, this is in Redneck, Virginia. She's not selling any niggers. And it blew me away because I had never seen someone be so presumptuous to say to somebody who's 3 times their age, I'm not serving you because you're Black. I'd never seen that. That is an experience that lives with me till today. But it has taught me about the subtleties of language, of communication, of body language, of seeing a bigger picture, because I can't allow you and your bigotry to stop me from going where I'm going or setting up what I'm setting up. And it has allowed me to breathe life into dreams that may have died if I had allowed myself to be a victim as opposed to being an overcomer. Because one of the things that I faced at bar school is that if you're not middle class, white, and from Oxford or Cambridge, you don't get to do something that's called pupillage. So you've done all of the academic stage, but you don't get to do the vocational stage, so you don't get to practice. So when I was in England and I was having difficulty getting pupillage, and I mean, I got pupillage interviews. I got the interviews, I went into them, and I was so nervous that I completely bombed them. Bombed them. One of the King's Counsels actually looked at the other barrister who was interviewing me. He said, did this guy go to bar school? Did this guy go to bar school? How did he manage to get this interview? Because I was just so in a fight for my life, and the words couldn't come out. But in any event, what was to happen happened, and I came back to Jamaica, and things just took off from there. But to answer your question, I firmly believe that traveling and exposure is important to developing people's outlook. Because when you're in Jamaica and you're only exposed to Jamaican culture, you get somewhat blinded by just being in your culture. And when you get exposed to other people's cultures and you meet people from other countries who have and practice different cultures, it allows you to expand your horizons, taste new food. It's not only jerk chicken and jerk pork that taste nice. Other things taste nice as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it allows you to
Yes.
and see other aspects of the world and how wonderful and magnificent God really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed you mentioned your parents' affiliation with Adventism, but also the fact that they have exposed you to quite a number of other religions. Do you align yourself to one faith group, or where are you in terms of the religious landscape?
Well, I find it difficult to subscribe to any philosophy that was used to enslave my forefathers. So it puts Christianity, Islam, and Judaism into a box for me. And I have been searching and where it is that I think I would place my hat in terms of spirituality is in some kind of African spiritual system. Why? Because I don't think, and I think Sizzler in two of his songs he explains it very well. In a song called No White God, he explains it very well. He asks the rhetorical question, when I ask God to save me, is he going to answer my prayer or the slave master's prayer? Because he can't give us both. So in my struggle for freedom and in the European struggle to keep me oppressed, how does the one God that we're praying to give both or answer both prayers? Now, when you look at also the difference in how it is that Europeans practice Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, to how the Africans practice all three of those religions, it is markedly different. Because again, going back to Francis Fanon and the Iceman inheritance, the view of somebody who comes from the Caucasus Mountains in a cave and the view of somebody who comes off a prairie in the middle of Kenya is going to be remarkably different. Markedly different, because I don't need to hoard the resources because they're everywhere. They're for all of us. Likewise, we can all have different opinions but still live together. You don't have that in a Eurocentric society. Because what you have, even England, you don't have, they like to talk about multiculturalism. You don't have multiculturalism. What you have is British culture and other cultures they tolerate. Your culture is not becoming a part of our culture. And our culture is not, we just allow you to do what you're doing, but it is not a multiculturalism that is really and truly a pot or a
Image.
melting pot where we're all heading towards a unification at some point in time. No. If we were heading to that unification, it would have happened from Greece, it would have happened from Rome, it would have happened a long time ago.
Let me ask you, you've made a point that quite a number of persons who have grown up as Christians, when they have been exposed to African culture, begin to question the validity of Christianity because of slavery. Is it possible that the Christianity that was practiced by the colonizers was a misinterpretation of scripture, and therefore the Christianity that they practice should not be held as a bad thing because of their interpretation of it, and therefore we can throw their interpretation of it out, but still hold on to the good of Christianity itself?
Well, you have a fundamental problem there. Because when you're throwing out the bad Christianity, what do you do? And coming from Jamaica, this is an image that I know is burned into your mind. It is the image of a white man with a halo over his head and a heart, a big red heart, and a key. What do we do with that white man? Because we know he isn't Jesus, but he is the person that we have put up as, whether symbolic or not, as a representation of Jesus. Now, when you're throwing out the bad, where do you put him? Because in the back of your mind, in the back of a lot of Jamaicans' minds, when they're praying to the God that they're praying to, it is that man that they see. And if that is the man that you see, it means if God is white and God is male, and that is good, just like what Malcolm said, if God is white and God is male, you are black and you are female, or even male, you're diametrically opposed to God, which means that inherently you are. And it means that we need to be led by this white man with his heart, with the key. We need to be led by him because he is our savior. No, and that is completely insanity to me, because
Yes,
no one man is going to lead me to salvation.
but
It hasn't happened historically. It isn't happening now, and I doubt very much it's going to happen in the future.
and I'm still going to come back to that, because there are quite a number of people who have rejected that picture of
Yes.
who God is, and for want of a better phrasing, don't see God as white, and use scripture to say that if we're to see a representation of God through his son, then the description is that he looked more melanated.
He
And
had hair of
therefore,
gold and skin of bronze.
right. And therefore, they will use scripture to say, I don't have to accept that version, because when I read the Bible, this is a version that I see and accept. And therefore, I will accept the God that represents me. And therefore, I will just say, you know what? There are good people, there are bad people. And those people who promoted slavery were just the bad people. And so I can't throw off the religion because they are bad people.
Question: before Saul, who turned to Paul, decided that he was going to set up on a rock in Italy to create the church that then became the Roman Catholic Church, before all of that, what did people believe? And
Well,
when you examine that, what you find when you go to Egypt, when you go to South Africa, when you go to East Africa, when you go to West Africa, what you still find a Trinitarian God. You find the God, the male, God, the female, God, the child. Now, when you look at, for example, the book of the Coming by Day and Coming by Night, what's called the Book of the Dead. This is Sir Wallace Budge and his wife. They're two Egyptologists. They took their honeymoon and they went down the Nile and they wrote down all of what was in the pyramids. What you find is that Christianity is a copy of the Egyptian mystery system, but certain aspects of it, of the Egyptian mystery system, are left out. So Egypt is still in Africa. There's nowhere near in the Middle East. There's no geographical place in the world called Middle East. Egypt is still in Africa. Mount Sinai is still in Egypt, has a moon. And when you go up there, there's still an Egyptian temple at the top of Mount Sinai. And in there are the 42 negative confessions. 42 of them. Those are the laws that the Egyptians ruled themselves by. And in the Christian book, we're told that Moses went up to Mount Sinai and Charleston Heston comes down with 2 tablets with 10 laws. Hold on. He comes down with 10 laws. He leaves 32. Why does he leave those 32? Moses will have to explain. But he comes down with 10 laws and he throws these tablets at the people. Remember, when he throws these tablets at the people are worshiping a golden calf. This golden calf goes on to be the foundation of religion in the Indus Valley, because the Indians come back and they bring back the sacredness of the calf. When you look at the Egyptian mystery system, the calf is Ma'at. That's the principle of justice where the woman, that's the origins of the symbol of justice. The woman with her 2 hands held out, one with a scale, one with a sword. The scale is the scale of truth, where you put the feather of truth into the scale and your heart into the scale, and you repeat the 42 negative confessions. I have not made light thy bushel. I have not, thou shalt not, but I have not. That's a confession that you're making. I have not stolen. I have not stolen food that was set aside for the gods, so on and so forth. So it raises a number of different fundamental questions. One, why Moses, who, according to Acts 7, verse 22, was learned in all the ways of the Egyptians, but come down and leave 32 of the confessions and up there. I don't know where we leave them for. And other thing that we have to examine, how do you separate, and why would you want to separate the actions of Christians from the doctrine of Christianity?
And my audience, you will recognize that there is a debate going on here, but I want to say to my learned student that when valid questions, but when I look at my reading of the Bible, and we'll always have different interpretations of the Bible, I look at the Bible and I don't see Moses leaving 32. I see God instructing Moses to write 10, which simply say love to God, love to man. I see Moses being human and in anger, and that is the other thing. And this is why I look at the religion of Christianity as a growth process. And that's why I can say there are good people and there are bad people in any religion, in any organization, in any coming together, any community. And I don't necessarily have to say that something is bad simply because representatives have failed to reflect honestly what the essence of the community is. Does that make sense to my learned friend?
How do you separate the essence of the community from the actions of the community?
And that is where I have to look at what is who is it that I'm looking at? I am a teacher. Do I make mistakes? Yes. Does that mean that I am not a good teacher? Does it mean that I don't know what I'm teaching? No. So the fact
that what you're teaching isn't valuable and isn't true. So if you're teaching mathematics, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the formula.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that the origin is bad. It means that the way people have interpreted it and lived it is not always a true reflection of where the source is or who the source is. And I go back to the question you said, when I pray and I'm the enslaved and the slave owner prays, and we are both praying for somebody to be saved, that God cannot answer both prayers. For me, my God is omniscient. And so he makes the right decision. Now, I still also have to look at the reality of sin. So my answer cannot be, when God answers it, he's answering neither of them or only one of them. Because, and I'm going to say something that some people might think is strange, but if I can understand everything about God, then God is too small. Does that make sense?
One of the safe havens for Christianity, excuse me, and religion generally, is to say that God cannot be comprehended.
No, I'm not saying it can't be comprehended.
Hold on. One of the safe havens in particular for Christians is to say don't question God because you can't understand God. He's too.
No. We are encouraged to question him, Kayode. We are encouraged to question him and to reason and to ask questions. We are encouraged to do that. We're not
Some of us
allowed.
are.
No, but he actually says, come, let us reason together. And for me, if I'm reasoning with you, this is what I'm doing. You know, he's saying, ask me questions, you know, and we have seen examples of that within the Bible where his followers have questioned him and he hasn't just shut them down. He has actually allowed them to question him. And, you know, because we're not just going by, we're not just
Sorry,
being led. You know, we're intelligent beings. We are created in his image, you know, so we're not supposed to just follow blindly. That is not what faith is.
if we're created in his image, and
Coyote, you and
he's
I,
like,
I'm going to say something. We have been speaking for an hour and 20 minutes.
no, man, I'm not worried about the time. If we are made
This
in
is
his
it.
image,
We're
and
going to
he's like,
have to, we're going to
why
have
can't we understand him?
no. We're going to have our conversation in two parts. And I'll have to do this. But, ladies and gentlemen, my learned friend is taking us on a journey. And I want us to continue this journey and I want him to share with us his understanding of things because this is what we do. It is possible. We explore and we share. And so, yes, I'm going to ask Kayode to continue to share with us.
No, you see, I understand omniscience, omnipresence, omnipower of God. But when Christians come up on a depiction of God with a beetle head, and then they come up on another picture of a deity with a dog head, and they come up on another picture of a deity with a plow head, and they come up on a depiction of a deity with a bird head. They say that these people who have these various different depictions of God are not monotheistic, they're polytheistic because they see each representation of God as being multiple gods. Now, the Afrocentric view is that there is one God. The Egyptians didn't believe in more than one God. They showed God having and displaying different characteristics, which God must have if he's in my brain, in the dog brain, in the bird brain, in the cow brain. Now, if he has all of those characteristics, but I am only showing one at a time, then in understanding the pantheon that is created by the Egyptians, that is brought to you through the Greeks, because the Egyptians never bring anything to you. It's the Greeks and the Greek philosophers that bring it to modern people. And when you get it that way, there's a tendency to want to distance yourself because you're saying, well, that is paganism. Because you have multiple different godheads. But we don't recognize our own paganism in Christianity. Because you have God, you have Jesus, you have the Holy Spirit. Some people celebrate them as different entities. Some people say that they're one. Then there's a Trinitarian view. A question that always defeats them is when you have taken the woman out of the equation, how do you get the child? How do you get a godchild without the godmother? How does that work? And that goes back now into, and this is why it is that you cannot separate Eurocentric Christianity from Europeans. because the history of the Greeks and the Romans lets you understand exactly why Moses left one of those commandments up there, one of the 32, which is that you shouldn't lie man with man and woman with woman. It makes you know why it is that they were happy symbolically to change the religion and take out the woman out of it because they don't have a problem man with man. And I don't know if they believe they're going to get a son out of it, but you know what? Answer original question you asked me.
Oh,
I don't believe and I don't subscribe to
the European.
the European view of Christianity, Arabic view of Islam, or the Jewish view of Judaism. Because what I have learned in my studies, and I've studied Buddhism, Shintoism, Taoism, Rastafarian, all of the ism there. I wouldn't say all, I've studied a number of them. And they are more similar than they are different.
They are different. Yeah. Yeah.
Muslims pray 5 times a day. Christians pray 5 times a day. And some Christians don't even recognize that they pray 5 times a day. You pray when you wake up, you pray at breakfast, you pray at lunch, you pray at dinner, and you pray before you go to bed. That's 5 times a day. And the religions are saying the same thing. Good over evil. Treat your brother the way you want to be treated.
Love for man, love.
If you don't do that, what you're going to end up happening is that when you dig out my eye, I go and dig out your eye.
And
you
then
go and dig out my next eye, and I am definitely digging out your next eye. All of us are going to be blind.
Then.
Right? And we know what happens in the land of the blind. The one-eye man is king.
Man is king.
And we don't want that because that is how you as your president. But that's another issue.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest has, I'm sure, has given you quite a lot to think about. And I haven't even gone through some of the things that I wanted to share with you. But I want to ask him a couple questions. And we have had a discussion, which I hope it has started some thinking with those of you who have been listening. I have a few more lighter questions to ask my guest. But he will still be dropping nuggets of wisdom with us. And I'm going to have him listen to two persons who have shared some views of who he is. But we're coming up to that. Tell me, what's your greatest regret and why?
My greatest regret is from my childhood. Both of my parents play musical instruments. My mom plays several, and they enrolled me in piano classes. And I just didn't like what I didn't like was walking from St. Richard's to Havendale to do these piano classes to then walk back home. And after a while, I mean, the beatings were just mounting up. And then my father just got frustrated and said, well, you want to start the classes? And I said, yes. And he said, all right, don't go back. And I regret. And it's my biggest regret because music has a way of developing the brain in ways that other things don't.
Yes,
I would have been a much better student had I displayed the discipline to carry out and overcome my displeasure about the walking and find the beauty that is in the music.
Yeah. And that on hindsight, isn't it? Yeah, comes with hindsight. Of course, from our conversation, my listeners would have recognized that your parents have had a strong impact on the life that you've had and the greatest influence in your life. What would you say is the key thing that you have gained from your parents' influence?
Well, both of them influenced me in different ways. My mom was very nurturing, but she is also the academic, I would say, because she's always learning. She's always doing something new. Right now, my mom is doing a master's in medical health law, and at the same time, she's doing sign language level 5, and she's doing
That's
a
awesome.
myriad of. So she's an eternal student. My father, on the other hand, he was more the person to impart life skills. So there's certain gems that have stuck with me. 10% of what I earn is mine to keep. So my dad was very big on saving. And he was not a risk taker. So unlike me, where I take risks. I take risks all over. So I've started several different types of businesses. Some have failed, some haven't failed. But I don't believe I can sit down like my dad did and just have the money in the bank, because inflation is going to eat it away. And for all I know, the bank workers might eat it away too, because I don't want to be in a position like Bolt, where they're bolting with my money. No, I rather take a risk and do something with it.
Yes,
But
yes.
additionally, my father has always taught me to be cautious. And the impact that the things that they did, and so, for example, if for boys is one of the big things that stood out for me from my childhood, because I have turned to those words in that poem in desperate moments. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it upon you, if
You
you
are
can doubt yourself, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you,
about
and
you.
make allowance for their doubting too. And then there are other works like the Desiderata that
Yeah, go placidly.
go placidly amidst the noise and haste. And then there's a line in there that talks about how the world is full of skullduggery. I mean, these are things that have been very transformative and developmental in terms of developing my personality. And I am not as much a firebrand as I used to be, but there's still a bit of fire there. And I'm very happy that my parents lit that fire, that desire. And my mom was always prompting me to go deeper. What's the deeper meaning? Why is it that, why? Well, maybe it was I who kept on asking why. But she, at no point in time was my why ever met with, because I saw it go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So my
yeah.
parents weren't like that. My parents were the type who would get out the relevant books and explain things to me, because they
Yes,
understood that
the importance.
not only the importance, but that if they didn't give me that answer, that I would
Yes,
find the answer somewhere else,
yes,
and I
yeah.
might find the wrong answer. So they
Yes.
always took the
Also,
time. And I mean, I had a very privileged childhood. I had Charlie Brown Encyclopedia while growing up, which I read from 1 to 7, from book 1 to book
wow.
17. I had the Encyclopedia Britannica. I was one of the first persons I knew about to get a computer. That was Curry's doing, because Curry introduced me to computers, and from there I just loved computers and computer science. And getting all of that, and trying to mix all of it with my dream of being a lawyer and growing up in Jamaica at the time that I did, it was a fantastic experience. And I'm very happy. I couldn't have asked for better parents, because I think I got the parents I needed. They were patient, they were kind, They took their time to explain and answer my 101 million questions.
Awesome. I am going to share a few words from a person in your life. And we're going to take a break and come back to your hearing this person.
Hey, so I've known Kayode for a very long time, since first form almost, and I've always been impressed by how he carries himself and how he sets his goal and how determined he is. And he has had some major setbacks, but no matter what, he's always persevered. He's always tried to achieve. It may take him a long time or a different path or many paths or many tries, but no matter what, he always achieves his goals. And I admire him like a whole lot. He's also a good friend, and a friend that when you're there, you need, he's going to be there for you. So I really appreciate who he is. Kayode is, he just, as I said, brilliant, talented, overall, good friend and great person.
I guess I owe Curry a fat check. No.
Oh, I think, the people who matter to you want you to know that they admire you and that they think highly of you. And that, as your mom says, you're creme de la creme. You are seen, you're heard, you're having an impact. You started off and you mentioned the fact that, you wanted, part of you is about knowing where to go, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. And obviously, you're getting there because you're having an impact. You're definitely getting there. You have on your bucket list quite a number of things. Why are the things you have on your bucket list on your bucket list?
I don't know. I love to travel. It's one of my favorite things to do of all time. And I want to go to places and see things that I have only read about. So Australia is on my bucket list because I want to see koalas, I want to see panda bears, and I want to see, because Australia is the only place in the world that has black swans, and I want
Yeah.
to see black swans. I also want to meet with the Aboriginal people because
Yeah.
I find them fascinating. China, I want to go to because it's one of those places that you read about, and in particular, I want to see the Great Wall of China, and I want to explore Africa some more. So I want to go down to Zimbabwe and to the Great Wall of Zimbabwe, which is one of which is one of the wonders of the world. It's one of the biggest movements of Earth that has ever been conducted by humanity. I also want to go and see the Zambezi River and Victoria Falls, and I haven't been to Nigeria as yet, even though I have Nigerian names. And again, I want to go and actually see them and spend time amongst those people. I've had lots of Nigerian and Ghanaian friends over the years, and I still have them. So I want to put some context on the bare bones and get some time spent in those countries.
Yeah.
So those are items that are on my bucket list. I mean, there are other things that I'd like to do, but those are the things that I felt comfortable telling you about.
Thank you. There is a bit of a whimsical side to you. Just hearing you talk about wanting to see koala bears and black swan, and so the passion that you have is a passion for life. It's not just about hard hitting stuff. It's for the entire outlook on life.
The entire experience.
Yes, and because of that, I want to find out, what would you say to your younger self or to somebody in a similar position to yours as you were navigating, or as you are navigating life?
Well, the first thing is one of the things I've said to you already. Don't give up.
Yes. Yeah.
No matter the challenge, no matter the obstacle. One of the things I've heard recently, and it really resonated with me, is that without a test, there's no testimony. So you're being given these, and another thing that I have learned over the years, which I really believe in, is that it is up to you to make stumbling blocks into building blocks. So life has a way of throwing things at you, and it is how you surmount them. It's how you circumvent them. It is how you go around, under, overneath, under, or around, or even underneath them, that is going to define who you are in the end. As you heard Kari said, I had a number of challenges. My dad died at a very pivotal point, and I mean, I had to regroup, pack up my dad's life, get back to my life, and get back on the path that I wanted to be on. And I've done that, and I hope I've done that with some amount of success.
Yes.
I mean, along the way, there have been other challenges, and there are still challenges. And what my life has taught me, and what I would say to anybody else, is simply don't give up. If you have a dream, don't give up on your dream. It took me 3 tries to complete law school. And if I had given, one of my friends, Fabian Williams, said to me that he admired the fact that I didn't give up on my dream. Because who would I be if I had given up on my dream? So that is one of the things I would say to them. The other thing I would say to them is, and this is something that I have done with some amount of success, don't take advice. If you're looking to leave home, don't take advice from a person who has never left home. And what do I mean by that? Find someone who is where you want to go and ask them how they got there. So I was lucky enough while I was at university to meet with a barrister who came from my university, the University of East London. Her name is Elfa Lacointe. And I asked her if I could shadow her. She allowed me to shadow her for a few days, a week. And then I went on to do other mini pupillage, vacation schemes, other types of work experience that put me on a path to where I wanted to get to, which is here now. And what I have done since then is that I have found other people who are where I still want to go. Because I want to become a King's Counsel. I want to be one of Her Majesty's Counsel. So I have found Earl Witter of King's Counsel. I found Jerome Lynch of King's Counsel. I found Oliver Smith, King's Counsel, and I've asked them to mentor me. Additionally, along the way, I found Martin Ford, King's Counsel. I found Catherine Apps, King's Counsel, over in Sugbe, King's Counsel. I found all of these people who have seen my desire to hone my skills and to become an advocate and to be one of the best advocates out there. And that is what I want to do. That is where I want to go. And as such, I have enlisted them to assist me to get there. Now, you might want to be a doctor, you might want to be an architect, but look for a mentor, look for someone who can tell you how to avoid the pitfalls, how to surmount them, and the things to do that will make you exceptional. The other thing that I would tell my younger self is to live. Live not only in the moment, but to not get too hung up on your dream that you don't experience every day. And it is very important for you to experience every day, because while you're pursuing your dream and fulfilling your purpose, there are other things that you're going to need in life. You're going to need friends. You're going to need a good partner. You're going to need associates. You're going to need family, the extended family. Don't forget your siblings. All about your goal, because there's more to life than any singular goal. And the final thing I would tell them is strive to be happy at all times. Strive to be happy. And as a postscript, always try to find balance and equilibrium, because all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and you can't have a relationship, for example, with your wife, and it is all about housekeeping. There has to be some amount of dating, of engagement. There has to be some amount of sharing what you love, and even though you don't love to do what they love, for them to be able to share with you, to have a deeper understanding. And postscript is always ask the question why.
Right.
Always.
Yes. Always ask. I love that. Kayode, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. It has been a while, but we got here, and I know my audience are intrigued and have listened and have maybe quarreled a little with you and argued a little with you because of some
I
of the
don't
views that you
always
shared.
argue with me,
But
or I argue with them.
But I think you have opened up different ideas, and you've possibly caused them to be more firmly grounded in their own views, because they're saying, oh, this is another way to question my own beliefs. I want to say thank you very much for coming. And I want you to, as we wrap up, I just want to say, what is it in your life would encapsulate the phrase, it is possible?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to thank you for your patience and your forbearance in trying to get me on this program. Been at it, I think this is our third attempt to have this interview. And I should apologize because the first two attempts the first two failures to have this interview were my fault. And some of it is not my fault, but just lifing.
I'm just happy that you're here.
I think the most important lesson that my parents gave me along the way to make me know that it is possible is two things. One, my mother's exploration of spirituality, not religion, but spirituality, and developing that sense of listening to my inner conscience. And the second thing is my father telling me that anything the mind can achieve, anything the mind can conceive, you can achieve. So I grew up in a household where if I wanted to become a neurosurgeon, I could have. At one point, I used to say I want to be an astronaut. And I know that if I wanted to become an astronaut, I could have, because there was nothing in how my parents raised me that allowed me to see limits. So on my journey to becoming a lawyer, a lot of people, I had a girlfriend when after I had I had come back from England the first time without completing law school, and my dad had died the second time. And she turned to me and said, "Why are you going back a third time? Don't you see that this is not for you?"
No.
And that was the day that and the expression that ended that relationship. Because I don't want and I don't harbor negativity around me. And if you can't see the reason for me to go back a third time, then we have to part ways, because I am going back a third time. I am goal oriented, as my mom told you. And that's very
Yes.
I'm goal oriented.
Yes,
So once
you'll get
I
it.
set my mind on something, I am going to achieve it.
Get it.
Or you're going to come and look for me in my grave while I was on my way to trying to achieve it.
Beautiful.
So that is why I know it is possible. I know it is possible because my forefathers did greater things than I have done. And anything that they could have done in their time period with the tools that they had, I can do in my time period with the tools I have.
Yes. As I said, the teacher has become the student, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this catching up, this conversation, this discussion, this disagreement on topic, but I loved the interaction we had this evening. And I am, as I said to everybody, I'm going to be excited. Yes, I'm excited. This young man was one of my students. And I am so happy to have him on my program because I've always been able to resonate with him as a student and now as an adult in his own field where he's successful. It has just been a pleasure. I have thoroughly enjoyed our session today, and we will reconnect. We will be chatting a little bit more because you have raised quite a lot of things that I would like us to explore some more, definitely, especially in terms of us being Afrocentric. Today,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been, as I said, my former student, but an advocate, someone who has lived up to his name, even though he's still wondering if he has. Somebody who has the admiration of his mom and his colleagues, his peers, and definitely someone who I know you have enjoyed listening to this evening. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for sharing with us. To my listeners, I want to say thank you for being here. And remember, be a dreamer, a doer, a thinker. See possibility everywhere. Because you are alive, everything is possible. The
I
Jesus
want to thank you
behind
for inviting me and thank you for having me.
you are ever so welcome. And Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and see you in 2 weeks' time.
When I call on Jesus, all things are possible. I can mount on wings like eagles and soar. When I call on Jesus, mountains are gonna fall. 'Cause he'll move heaven and earth to come